Good morning, happy Tuesday, 9th of Feb already. It must be nearly pancake day. Must be nearly pancake day, which is every day in my house actually. Anyway, we've even got the waffles out recently. Quick recipe by the way, 2 eggs, 60 grams of peanut butter, scoop of vanilla whey protein powder, dash of cinnamon, blend that up, a little bit of baking powder actually, blend that up, put it in a waffle maker. Good. Dip it in some yogurt and raspberries. Anyway, it's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about self-sabotage today. I do go off on tangents. Self-sabotage. So, why it's a good thing. This might sound a bit odd, but I want to touch on this because I'd say self-sabotage comes up a lot in one-to-ones, in when people get started. They say, I lost weight before, I've lost weight, I find it okay to lose the weight, but I always self-sabotage myself. On my, when I say, our Kickstart book, there's some stuff we go over in here, which, what stopped you in the past? What's the obstacles that's stopped you in the past? And one of the things that nearly always comes up, or what's going to come up now, the only obstacle is me. The only obstacle is me. And when I ask a question like, what do you mean by me? Then we can start to delve into a bit more because, morning Stella, because firstly, sometimes what has actually happened is the decision we've made, we've looked at the costs and the benefits, and maybe subconsciously we've just perceived the benefits of self-sabotaging, as we call it, as higher than the cost of doing the opposite. And this might be linked to what we value most. So for example, if you've got a lot of work on at the moment, or you're doing some procrastinating or something, or you're looking after kids and etc., you've got a lot on, because you value that so highly, aka doing the work and looking after the kids, etc., it's not that we self-sabotage, it's just that our willpower energy only goes so far. So subconsciously we might be going, right, the benefits of eating right now is I just get a bit of me time, I get a break away, and then I can go back to this work and do it better. Now, the issue there is often we're beating ourselves up after that because we've made a decision that we're not happy with, although it partly aligns with our values. And then we've got to look at, okay, what are the costs of doing this activity, whether it's binge eating, whether it's snacking when we're not hungry, whether it's just going to the kitchen for a break, and what are the benefits of doing it? And literally clearly write them down so you can see, and then make a choice. Give yourself, no judgment, just make the choice. What are the costs of doing it financially? What are the costs of doing it? And this might sound not harsh, but I had a chat with one of the ladies the other day, and she said that I then beat myself up for the next day. And if you think about it then, okay, how often does it happen? Well, sometimes it can, imagine if it happened every day, and then you beat yourself up for the next day, that's half of your life essentially wasted, beating yourself up for something. That's the cost. Who else is impacted if you beat yourself up every day? What happens to your energy? What happens to the things you do? Confidence levels, decisions you make, those around you. Financial cost of it, eating when you're not hungry. Eating when you're not hungry, to the climate, food waste. You've got to look at the costs and benefits, and something might hit for you. What are the benefits of doing the opposite? What else could you do instead? Ask that question. What could you do to create the feeling you're trying to create? Because there's a feeling of maybe calm, rest, and sometimes it's interesting because we then eat and it feels like we're doing something, so we don't feel guilty for having a rest. And is that a belief that you need to really ask whether it's true or not? So for example, people might feel guilty about going for a bath when they got work to do, or meditating, or having a 5-minute sit down with just deep breathing and shut eye, but they won't feel guilty about eating when they're not hungry for 5 minutes. It's an interesting one, and it might be a belief that you just need to squash. Morning Marie, morning Judith. So also just consider these questions, okay? And this is why it could be a good thing here, because we're learning a lot about where we're at and what we're doing. It's number one, what would you have done before when it comes to self-sabotage? So sometimes when we're trying to make positive changes, our attention is on it more. We're hyper-vigilant of what we're doing, okay? The result of that is that we notice it more when we get a setback because our attention's on it. So sometimes we can end up beating ourselves up more, forgetting that actually maybe we went 5 days without any self-sabotage when before we were doing it every day. That's still a win. You just added 4 or 5 days to your streak, if you want to call it. Then consider the question, what made you stop? What made you recognize that you've self-sabotaged? Because remember, we notice it more when we're trying to do well or we're trying to do something differently. And then consider, so give yourself a pat on the back for stopping. Then consider, what would the ideal scenario look like? What would the ideal scenario look like on this self-sabotaging situation? Like, what would you have wanted to happen? So if you're not happy with what happened, what would you have wanted to happen? What would you have wanted to happen? Then consider, what would you need to make that happen? What would you need to do to make that happen? And I would write these down, because sometimes it's a lot more simple than we think. Easy? No. Simple? Yes. And when we're able to write it down, we're able to get out emotion from our head. We're able to look at what we're actually doing and then make a essentially more intelligent decision that we want to make. Whether it's that way or that way, it doesn't really matter. At least you're wanting to make it. Because I had another chat with someone the other day and they said, yeah, I had some chocolate and I sat down, I decided it made me feel better. And they said, yes. And that's fine. Like, we do eat to make ourselves feel better. That's actually it. Otherwise we would starve. So it's that's why eating makes us feel better, because otherwise we'd starve. But actually, you've got to consider we live in a food environment now where food manufacturers are essentially making food to prey on this, that we love enjoying food, and they make it, if you look at processed foods, salt, added sugar, added fat, these override a lot of our hunger hormones. It's very easy to get hold of food, even healthy food, and that can have its other barriers, right? When we overeat on healthy foods, we're binging essentially on healthy foods because we're still eating excess calories. We're not really enjoying it because it's more of a just eating for maybe boredom, for escapism. And that's where we just need to go through these questions and really get to the bottom of these beliefs and why we're doing it. What feeling are we trying to create? So, a lot to digest there. If you have any questions on that, do let me know. Let me know your biggest takeaway from this, but I would go over these questions. What would you have done before? What would you have done before when you self-sabotaged? What made you recognize it? What made you recognize it more this time? How often do you do it? And then work out the percentage of your life you spend beating yourself up for that. Then consider, is it worth it or not? What would you want the ideal scenario to look like? Then, what would you need to do? What would need to happen for you to create that scenario? Hope that helps. Any questions, as always, let me know. If you're joining us for our free 5-day Kickstart, which starts on Monday, 6 days, click the link above to register. You need to be in the group, the private support group for Monday, but it opens on Saturday where we'll introduce it. Any questions, let me know. Have a lovely Tuesday and speak soon. Bye-bye.